Hey, good morning. I'm on here with Mike Lamerato. I met Mike on a mental health call in the Uncivilized Nation. He was hosting this mental health call for men, a space where we could just open up and be ourselves. And I remember sitting on that call and we were talking about different types of therapies. And the one thing that caught my eye was that a lot of the men in that group were open to the therapy process, and it's not something that I think is normalized amongst the men's community. So I asked Mike to come on a few months ago, and I'm glad that we finally got the opportunity to jump on here. And today we're just going to talk about his journey from his time going from undergrad to grad school and the challenges he faced, and then why he chose therapy and uh, some of the things that are associated with therapy and normalizing therapy amongst men. And I want to just take a moment and say that he's a men's therapist, and I haven't met many of just men's therapists, so this is great to have you on, Mike. How are you doing today?
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Happy to be here and share a little bit about and men's therapies. They tend to be a little bit more elusive, but I think it's getting a bit more popular these days. So yeah, happy
Fantastic,
to be
Mike.
here.
Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey, and then we'll dive right into that painful moment or that challenging moment in your life.
Yeah, of course. So I live out here in Metro Detroit area, Royal Oak, Michigan. Been a mental health professional for the last 10 years, and I was telling you before the call, just celebrated kind of our 10-year anniversary and made the pilgrimage back to grad school and just to kind of get to see where you came from and where you learned. And so this stuff is all kind of fresh on my mind, which is, I think, perfect for today. But yeah, like you said, I treat men here primarily. So individual therapy is kind of my bread and butter, my main gig. I've had my own practice for 3 years now. And then a newer revolution has just been getting into men's retreats, running men's groups throughout the year. That's something I've been doing for a while, but really just getting the men on the land and connecting and getting them away from their just the city, the communities, and bring them to the inner communities of nature and other men. So yeah, if it's men's issues involved or men's health involved, that's my game. So yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was, as I mentioned to you before the call, the theme or the purpose of this podcast is to share stories of men that have turned their pain into their power, where they've encountered some challenging moments in their life and they chose to look
Yeah.
inward, connect within, and live with purpose. Right. And so
Yeah.
let's dive into this painful moment or this challenging moment in your life that really changed the trajectory of where you ultimately are.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I think a pretty good time to talk about is just the transition from undergrad to grad school. And, I just want to say initially too, like very fortunate life just in terms of having everything I need. And so I don't want this to sound like, poor me or anything like that, but have been very fortunate in life. But I think the bigger kind of crucible here is like young guys kind of figuring out who the hell they are in this world. It's something I see kind of every day a lot with younger men, and we see men going to college less and different things. So I think it kind of speaks a little bit to just how confusing it can kind of be. And I know you have a military background and maybe had to make choices around that too, right? So um, yeah, essentially my story starts kind of from day one of knowing that I was curious about people. Just whether you want to call it anxiety or just consciousness or whatever, from an early age, I was just always seeing myself in relationship to people. I was always curious. I would always kind of ask questions about that. I wondered why people did the things they did, right? So, um, and yeah, that kind of progressed throughout the years. When I got to undergrad, it was like a whole new world, right? I kind of came from a bit more of a sheltered, kind of went to parochial school, stuff like that. And so when I got to undergrad, it was kind of the world opened up, and I learned all these things. But pretty much always knew I wanted to be a healer. Kind of jumped around from pre-med to neuroscience to psychology to law enforcement. That was during the 07, 08 crash. So law enforcement and municipalities were kind of on the decline at the moment. So I said, okay, like let's double down in psychology, right? It's interesting. Started doing some research and undergrad research and looking into different things, and was in a pretty serious relationship at the time, kind of heading into senior year of undergrad. And then was pretty kind of destined just to go into what I would call more of a safe route, right? I was just going to go into research psychology, kind of get a master's, got into Arizona State. You know, the idea was my girlfriend at the time, we were getting married, right? As everyone thinks at some point. And yeah, last semester of senior year, everything got kind of turned on its side. That first or second real big relationship ended. And I was about a couple weeks out from graduation, not really knowing who the hell I was, and what I'm going to do, right? This was before the nice guy approach was readily available and readable, right? But I identified with that a lot. I decided not to go to Arizona State. I was looking into potentially doing personal training, which there's nothing against personal trainers. I think definitely is a good route to go, but I wasn't valuing kind of who I was, and I wasn't believing in myself. And it was a very painful moment, right? I think depression is one of the things that most guys probably have dealt with. It's probably one of the more common kind of things. So, you know, I can remember just that last semester not getting off my couch, barely getting to the gym, barely making it by, just kind of, I don't know, just vegetating, right? Just in that pain. It was the first relationship that ever really kind of knocked me to that core, right? And then kind of out of the blue, I'd applied to some other grad schools, and remember I came home, packed up everything from college, didn't really know what I was going to do. Got back to my summer job, so I said, okay, well, at least I have 3 months to, you know, make a little bit of money here, live at home for a minute. And then I got a call from another grad school that essentially they had an assistantship opening. So assistantships are essentially you take a job with the university and they help pay for some of your time there. So decided to switch programs and go to a place that I had never visited or didn't even really know anything about, in the middle of nowhere, Illinois. So and it doesn't even really stop there, right? So I went there. I went to orientation, and I remember my mom coming down with me, and we stayed in a hotel for a couple days, and we found a place to live. And then she took the train back, and I was like, okay, like this is happening. I'm out here on my own, you know, kind of taking that hero's journey, that jump. And the next thing was really wild, right? I was at orientation, and I saw people from another program there in clinical psychology. And I was just I couldn't stop like staring at these people of like, wait, what are these people doing? You know, because I was kind of in this safe world of research experimental psychology, but something in me just kind of clicked. And it just so happened that in that program, someone had dropped out. So what happens is, as long as you're in the psychology program, essentially you can, if there's a spot, you can kind of transfer. You're kind of a free agent. So yeah, I approached the clinical program director and said, hey, I don't know what's really telling me this, but I think I need to be over here with you guys. And as luck would have it, he said, yeah, we actually had someone drop out last minute. So the spot's yours. We never really done this before, but the spot's yours if you want it. And so I grabbed it and I said, okay, well, I'm going to see how this goes for 3 to 6 months. You know, let's not make any decisions. First 3 to 6 months were pretty wild. It was like, what am I doing? Am I sure I can do this? Do I even want to be a therapist? But I kind of listened to that piece deep inside of me, right? And some people might call that intuition or core energy or the Holy Spirit or what have you. But I think that's within all of us, right? And I think as guys, we'd be wise to listen to that more and kind of turn down some of that otherly worldly stuff or just criticism or doubt. So yeah, in the matter of a month, my life went from I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do. I'm done with college. My whole life has crashed in on me to now I'm in the middle of nowhere, rural Illinois, and feeling like I kind of found my home. So it was just a really, and I look back to it and got a bit emotional when I went back this past weekend because it's just, it's just crazy how life works out like that somehow. How out of like you said before, how out of pain or hardship or heartache can come some of our greatest things, right? And sometimes you have to trust yourself and take that next step.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I appreciate that. I was few months ago, I was on a walk. We were in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I was on this trail and I was by myself and I just had this thought that came to me because I was focused so much on my failures,
Yeah,
and I'm a very big believer that when you have negative thoughts, you're going to attract negativity, right? So it's being aware
absolutely.
of you know how um, your self-talk, the power of your self-talk.
Yeah,
And I had this reframe moment that was, what if my biggest failures were my
yeah,
greatest successes? And that out
yeah,
of our failures, perceived failures,
yeah,
come our greatest
yeah.
successes. So I want to take a minute and go back to that time and ask you the question of, so you were having a lot of chaos in your life. Your girlfriend had just broken up with you. You had talked about associating. You could associate with the nice guy,
Yeah.
and you were talking about not going to the gym and things of that nature. Well, what were you doing? How were you coping with all these feelings that
Yeah.
you were having? Because many men, we don't like feeling. We don't want to do that. We want to stay far away
Yeah. Well, I can tell you not well initially, right? That was 21-year-old Mike, right? So yeah, pretty standard, right? I didn't go down the more stereotypical routes of drinking and that kind of deal, but I had just, the body's fascinating, right? When you have this pain, and especially depression, it actually lights up the same parts of your brain as like actual physical pain. So I'm more, and I find that everyone kind of reacts to depression differently, right? But I was more of a disassociator, right? So I was kind of like a zombie walking around. I can remember sleeping, and some guys might identify with this, but just sleeping so much. And I'm a fairly active guy, and I was just laying on the couch. My roommates thought I was like, hey, you should like go to the hospital. You're like dying, or what's going on? So it was really just not allowing myself to feel those emotions first, right? And it wasn't until I kind of came back home, like thank God I kind of was graduating and just getting back to some home life and had a bunch of high school buddies who were working out again. And that kind of pulled me out of it, to tell you the truth. I preach about this probably too much and daily with my own clients, but it's movement, man. I really think movement as guys, for everyone, obviously, we see that going on at a national level, but movement as guys allows us to kind of dive into our deeper kind of crevices elsewhere, right? And I think um I just think that's really important. So yeah, I started moving, and when you move, you can say, okay, yeah, what's going on over here, or let's get curious about that. It almost arms you or allows you to engage your emotions in a more direct manner.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
appreciate that. There's a practice that I do with my coaching clients of like feel the feelings, and part of that is
yeah,
is movement, right? Like in my
yeah.
opinion, that being able to get these emotions flowing, you have to move. So I really do appreciate that.
Mhm.
In the time of no, there
Yeah,
was no
yeah.
like probably deep literature on the nice guy syndrome. Can you, and I know
No,
there's a lot more now,
no.
but can you tell me about the nice guy syndrome and then how you started to move away from that? How you started to get in connection, like you said, with that intuition within yourself. Because I think a lot of men, we don't have connection with ourselves because we're so externally focused. We're worried about our
Yeah,
kids. You know, as a father of four, soon to be
yeah,
five, like I'm worried about my kids' emotions. I'm worried about
of
my
course.
wife's emotions, right? I'm worried
Sure.
about making sure that the house is taken care of. What
Yeah.
what did you do? What is a nice guy, and then what did you do to start getting in touch with yourself?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think a lot of people have a different definition of the nice guy, but I tend to look at it as an anxiety disorder. I tend to look at it as a part of us that says somewhere along the way, and a lot of people would say it's kind of in our generation. So I would say like older 20s to early 50s, late 40s is a good like subset of nice guys in my opinion. But um, it's this anxious part of us that says, hey, somewhere along the line, you learned that it wasn't okay to kind of speak up. Um, you're not totally okay with yourself, and you need to be really respectful and overly respectful of everyone else, right? Um, and I think it really comes from the origins of just not being validated on certain things, not being able to open up, um, kind of be seen, not heard. There are some like societal things that probably happened during our childhood too, of just, you know, don't distress women, don't cause problems for people. I have this concept like to call no wake, you know, like water, no wake zone. Um, don't create wake, don't create waves. Be a good boy and just kind of travel on that way. And then the problem becomes, right? We you can act like you don't have needs until you're blue in the face, but shocker, we all have needs, right? We're humans, so um, those needs get covertly kind of threaded into passive aggressive behavior, and then things get real wonky, right? You know, women are like, oh, this guy is just he's perfect, he's so nice, he does all these things, there's never any drama until that one day where that resentment leaks out, or you know something leaks out, and it can get really dark, right? You know, guys can, some of this stuff's been stewing for a long time. So yeah, I look at it as more of a societal response to kind of where our parents were at when we were little. um Not talking about the deeper emotions, shame, guilt, and unfortunately kind of internalizing those. um and looking back, man, it's like cringy because I saw that so much in this relationship, right? That was only my second, third girlfriend at the time, you know. Um, and how I kind of reclaimed that was, unfortunately, I think sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes guys have to kind of be chopped down a little bit to really feel and really move through that pain, and to then on the other side hopefully claim something for yourself. So my pithy answer to that is essentially just, at some point you have to choose yourself, and that might mean standing alone for a while, that might mean doing something crazy like going to a grad program you just accepted to 2 weeks prior, that could be, for some people, I think too, entering the military, something they need to do for themselves or to better themselves, or to have a calling or a family. Um, but yeah, I think at some point you realize that if you don't ever choose yourself first, that you can't show up for anyone else in a healthy masculine manner. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I want to ask this question because it came up, and if you can't answer, that's okay.
Sure.
But you
Yeah.
know, I think about 2.5 years ago, Alex, right? I'm 13 years in the Navy. I'm
Yeah.
I'm solely focused on my career.
Yep.
And when you had said right there, and I have challenges by this now of like creating messaging to reach men like 2.5 year old or 2.5 year old 2.5 years ago, Alex.
Yeah.
When you say choose yourself, like I am choosing myself. I am, you know,
Yeah.
working and I am providing for my family. I'm doing things that what I perceive that I want to do, right? But then
Yeah.
I pull these layers back and I realize that I joined the military because I wanted a connection with my father. Like I didn't have any connection with my father. My father was a 20-year Air Force veteran, and
Mm,
as soon as I joined the Navy, man, boom, we were communicating, we were having long phone calls. There was some type of connection. So my question is this: like, what does choose yourself look like to men
yeah,
that it may not be? I don't want to use the word conscious, but have not
yeah,
done some work to peel back layers.
yeah. I think it's starting to look at your programming. It's interesting. Your 2.5 self was thinking that they selected the Navy to, and I'm sure there was parts of you that were really fascinated or like felt good about that. But yeah, it was tied to your dad. So it's almost like I almost want to say it's like this rite of passage thing that doesn't always happen in our culture, right? So until you can't really shake that out until you've kind of been able to stand in the clearing, right? It's a phrase I like to use with some people of standing in the clearing is essentially just saying you are somewhere between leaving your family of origin and starting a new life, and life kind of knocks you down in a sense, right? So I think for maybe even some of the younger guys is how that would translate is trying something on your own, trying to get out into the world in some way, right? Whether it's through military things or just college or just traveling Europe for a year, whatever you need to do, but you need to stand in the clearing of your life at some point. And that's where I think we're seeing a lot of problems with that right now in the US, obviously. Um, but I think that's what we're called to do, right? And yeah, I'm not discounting that can be significantly daunting and overwhelming, and people may not have the means to be able to do that, right? Or they rely on their parents or their family or their culture to kind of to survive, but they also know it's kind of keeping them held back. I think that's tough, and there's no really minimum or maximum age here, which I think is kind of the scary thing. Some guys wake up, I work with, I pretty much work from 20 to 60 is like my range of men. And there's some guys who don't wake up till 50 and who are now saying, wow, I've been an engineer for 30 years, but I actually just want to go into forestry or be a biologist or do that. So I think what we're doing, honestly, with this kind of work and then Man and Civilized is just doing this work earlier and giving these young men experiences where they can figure out kind of who they are at younger and younger. We're like moving that bar back down to um, what I think should be like a proper time of adolescence of spending time away from your parents and figuring out. I just got back from a vision quest in March, and being a 33-year-old man and finally getting to the point in my life where I can like trust myself fully and have that, it's like, man, we need to offer that stuff to younger generations. Yeah. So hopefully that answered. Hope I'm not rambling too much on that one, but yeah.
I mean, I think that it's important that we bring like highlight to that because, like you said, many men don't. Sometimes we are. I started joining a bunch of Facebook groups recently, dad Facebook groups, because I was on a call
Yeah.
with Traver on the Uncivilized Father, and he had asked me like, "What are fathers struggling?" And I can only tell you from my experience what I'm struggling with. And so and the men that I work with, I know a little bit, but I'm like, I want to know more. So I joined all these Facebook groups and I got onto these Facebook groups. And I immediately saw a lot of negativity and fear and a lot of victim mindset, right? And which comes to my next point of like the how common this victim mindset is of where like
Yeah.
life is happening to me instead of
Yeah.
me I'm the creator of my life, right? Like
Correct.
instead of seeing everything, and this is, I know this is a higher thought than people may be able to process, and I'm not taking any hits there, but if you can change the way that you see life of like, this is good or bad, it's just happening,
Yeah.
right? Like this is just happening. And
Yeah.
having the curiosity in what the lesson is. Why is this,
Yeah.
like having more interest into the question rather than the answer, right? Because
Yeah.
when you get the answer, when you're looking for the answer, you're like committed to being right. You're committed to this path of defensiveness, closed-minded. But if you just have this open mind and you're curious of what comes from it, I think there can be change.
Yeah.
And I say all that to preface that you talked about this intuition a couple minutes ago that you
Yeah.
you followed into clinical psychology, right? To bring it back to
Yeah.
you here. Tell me, was that built? Was that something you always had, or what did you do to get that intuition? Because I'm sitting here and I'm like, wow, man,
Yeah.
me and you were the same,
Yeah.
we're the same age, and I'm like, I'm still trying to
Yeah.
find the intuition from time to time.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I think it means different things to different people, but I think it really is I think we all have an inner core energy, or if you want to call that your core self. And I think if you listen, if you can quiet some of the generational voices, if you can quiet, the world a little bit, I think that voice is really there, and we talked about wilderness retreats too previous, and it's pretty clear that when you get guys on the land, you listen to things a little bit better, but yeah, I think it's something that's built into all of us. I don't think you just find it one day at the, back of your closet. I think it is there. It's about kind of doing the work to get back to yourself. I think we all have inherent wisdom in there. Some might require a little bit more excavating than others, right? Just because we have such unique experiences and we live in a diverse country with a lot of things. And I think it's there. I think it's there. Most guys, if you'll talk to them, they'll know that marriage maybe wasn't the thing for them. They'll know that taking this very safe job, they still heard a little faint voice that wasn't totally okay with that, right? So I think what we're doing is we're kind of like calibrating men to listen to those deeper areas again and not get so wrapped up in overperforming, over providing, all the things that our dad's generation did pretty well, I would say, for most guys at least. But getting back into, oh, actually, life works better if I actually honor the things that I like to do. I tell people all the time, like if you were to kidnap me and I woke up and I was somehow now an accountant and I was working at a firm and I was auditing people, like I wouldn't last a week, man. I would run away. I would run away. I would escape because I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. I have to work with people. I have to work for myself. I have to work with men. Now they don't like women. I love women, but it's just, yeah, once you kind of engage that core self, and there's a lot of different ways to get there, right? Therapy, wilderness retreats, men's initiation, men's groups, talking with other men. I can't tell you how many men this past year alone that have randomly met throughout life have wanted to connect and have been very curious about what it means to be a therapist, right? And I don't think that's a coincidence, right? I think what we're talking about is guys are waking up to like what they actually want to do with their life. Because at the end of that is if you're doing what you want to do, no surprise here, everyone else is happier in your life, right? Your wife actually likes you, your partner likes you, your kids can look up to you. You feel good about your community you're in, right? It's so kind of wraps around to that nice guy question again, but if you do this work, like everyone else celebrates that too, and you're just a better partner and a better father and a civilian and whatever, you know. So yeah, but I think it's there. I think it's there, and I think people like us are trying to help guys acknowledge that. Right.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've said this many times on different podcasts about like the importance of doing your own work. You know, for years, my wife tried to get me to do the work, and she wasn't successful. And there was a point where she had to, you know, like she was doing her own work and she was hiring her vibration. And there's two, you know, it goes in two directions, right? Like if you're in partnership or whatever your situation is, if you're around people that are not doing the work and their vibrations lower, you're gonna match that. But if you surround yourself with people that are doing the work, that have higher vibrations, you're either gonna, you know, detach from them, you're gonna, you know, go your separate ways, or you're going to higher your vibration. And I think that it's important that as men that we understand that energetics is real, right? Like we get so caught up in the tangible, we get caught up in the material, everything that's around us. But there is an energetic piece that I think that we lack. And that's why I asked that intuition question, because I really do think that energetics has a play there on that. Transitioning, I want to ask this question to you because I've been very intrigued. Like, why therapy? Like you went to clinical psychology, you know, you had this intuition thing, but why therapy, men's therapy, and now we were talking about wilderness therapy. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I kind of had a plethora of interests in an undergrad, right? I kind of bounced between pre-med and neuroscience, law enforcement. I knew I wanted to be in the helping field. I was in the right quadrant. I was just kind of looking through the jungle of what do I actually see myself doing? And I think just putting yourself into different shoes, and I did different experiences, did research, shadowed people, interviewed people, which I always recommend to younger people, you know, just interview people. Like if you see a guy doing what you maybe like to do, talk with them, take them out for coffee, you know, go out to breakfast. But so I kind of tried on all these different hats in a slight way. You know, pre-med was, no, I suck at chemistry and calculus, and I had a hard time getting into those classes. So I kind of was like, all right, well, let's look over here. We can kind of keep this on the back burner. Law enforcement, I really interested in that, but still not always just helping people at the end of the day. And I looked at neuroscience and experimental psychology, and really cool, really fascinating, right? What does the brain do? Finding different medications and cures to things was really cool. Still not intimate enough for me. And then I think how it landed on clinical psychology was just, I can't think of a better privilege or anything that's more interesting than to be able to know and work with people's stories and to see people, especially men, show up in their life, right? So obviously I didn't know that as I was getting into the field. It just seemed like, what can I do? How can I do the best or serve the most within the capacity that seems the most interesting to me? And, you know, it's talked about a lot in grad school is the therapeutic relationship is unlike any other relationship you ever have in your life, right? I mean, you can open up to this person. This person might know everything about you, and your partner might know that too, but it's a person that you don't have to do anything for, right? It is such like a coveted, special, important relationship. So that's why I think really just pulled to therapy, right? It is such a unique experience. You might know more about this person than anyone else in their life does, and you might see them in that darkness, but then you also get to see them kind of reclaim their life and crawl out of that. So I'm biased, man, honestly, but I don't see that. That's a cool gig. You know, I don't know anything else other than maybe like surgery or something like that, where you would be that intimate with someone and help them kind of walk during that path of life, knowing that that guy has not only kind of saved his own life, but is now, you know, there's these ripple effects within his family and his partner and his society. You know, a lot what Traver talks about too is just kind of helping one man at a time. You're not just helping the man, right? You're helping everyone around him. So continue to be very blessed by that. And I just personally can't see a more interesting job. So it's how I kind of landed on therapy. Yeah.
It leads me to this question of how do we normalize therapy as men, right? Like, and this is a big question. Maybe I could try to be more specific, but I often, when I'm talking to men in these Facebook groups, or I, just interact with in public, as soon as I mention men's work or therapy, I get like pushed away, right? This hard boundary gets put up, and it doesn't personally hurt me when they do it, but it hurts that I know that these men there's pain, right? There's pain, and it's important that we're able to understand our pain, because like I say, the theme, if we can understand our pain, it can propel us to our power, our purpose in life. And so, like, how do we normalize therapy? Because I think I am a firm believer therapy is a I think it's a necessity. Like, we need this, right? We need this to take the transformation steps, and not in the sense there's something wrong with you, but that it's a tool or a resource that you can just vent out.
Yeah, I think what we're already doing, I think having guys open up about these things. I think the men's work, I think if you can get guys into men's work as a group, it becomes less daunting. I think we have guys open up about their experience with therapy and just sharing that. I remember years ago, University of Michigan football player opened up around going to therapy, and this was like probably 6 years ago, and everyone was like, why are you in therapy? You're the star, whatever. You play for Michigan, like you shouldn't be depressed. Like, what's wrong with you? And I'm glad to see that's improved now, but I think it starts with like people really just opening up, getting into men's work. That's more of the open-ended, but I think on more of a just health or clinical kind of side is just go to the doctors. Like, go, if you're in your late 20s or 30s, just go to your primary care doctor, right? And say, hey, most of them are trained now to check for depression, and just be honest. This is caring for yourself. So maybe the first step is just to say, hey, I haven't had a physical in 5 years. I should go do that. And not being afraid to, and hopefully have a good PCP, but hopefully telling them, hey, him or her, hey, like, I'm not doing okay. Do you have anyone locally who you'd recommend? So starting there can be a really easy way to of an inroad if you don't know where to start. And therapy doesn't hurt. It's uncomfortable, but it doesn't hurt. Talk with someone, get a free consult. Myself and a lot of people I know here, at least, offer free consults. And we had a saying in grad school, all these things from grad school are coming back because it's fresh, but date around. We used to say, like, finding a therapist is kind of like dating initially, right? Sometimes you got to date around a little bit and find someone you want to like this person, right? So you don't, it's this weird thing that guys will do sometimes, is like, I've seen this doctor for like 50 years and he saw my parents and my grandparents, but I don't really like them. It's like, well, like, date around then. Like, it's okay. You don't have to, just because they have an advanced degree doesn't mean they're going to be the best fit for you. So yeah, I would say talk with people. If every guy, so at least one guy in every friend group probably has been to therapy at this point. I would say it's getting better. So if that one guy were to open up, and let's be honest, when your friends are struggling, but how hard is it to name that, right? How hard is it to pull someone aside after a night out and say, hey man, heard what's going on. You seem like you're struggling. Are you okay? So doing that reach out too, I think we can do a better job. But yeah, I think it's talking about it, getting your other health looked at, because we're not the best at that either. And caring for the people in our tribes, right? If a guy is not okay, let's not make it weird to reach out and say, hey, you can hate me, you can yell at me, but I don't think you're okay. And I'm not here to criticize you. I'm here to support you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to, before I get into my last question, to open it up for you, I want to ask you one more.
Yeah.
Specifically
Sure.
around, maybe there's something that we can provide even more value than what we already have in this episode. Like I know one thing for me, I'm always in my head, and I know a lot of men talk about that. What are some exercises or some tips that you can give right now on men that maybe just like the simple, like I'm always in my head, I'm always thinking, I'm always over analyzing. How can we drop into the body? Like what are some things that we can do? A quick exercise, if you have one, or advice that you can give on that.
Yeah, yeah. I would say, so I think I'm stealing this from the Bedros Koulian show because I like watching his stuff just with discipline and stuff like that. But he makes a good point. Um, Writing out your rules, your routines, and your rituals. And something I start with every client, and this isn't exotic or sexy, but it is just writing out what you want your days to look like. Because I can guarantee you, even if you're the most efficient, happy dude, you're gonna have days that like just literally kick you down, kick your ass and just keep you down, right? But if you can have a roadmap, or I like to call them guardrails, um, that is like non-negotiables, right? So non-negotiable for me is Monday through Thursday, I work out before work, before I start seeing clients. I don't check my phone until after the gym, and I meditate 10 to 15 minutes, right? Those those things are things that everyone can do to some degree, right? So I would say is start making non-negotiables in your life and start making containers in your life that are going to get you outside of your head, right? I see a lot of guys, what happens is they have this great life and then they don't have these guardrails. So then they get just stuck in isolation, problematic soothing, right? Over drinking, porn, all those things are very like, they almost keep you like shackled, right? So, but even if you're having the worst day and you show your body that, hey, I'm still going to go to the gym, I'm still going to have date night, and I'm still going to meditate, like what are you showing your body, right? You're showing your body a dialect, which is I can feel both of these things and I can still keep moving on. So I get real up close and personal with people's schedules when I first meet with them, because if you don't have that container holding you, you're just going to be kind of just blowing in the breeze some days because you don't have any anchor points, right? So and again, that's not like super in depth or like parts work or insightful, but it's a good place to start. I even throw this in just as ending of like I read somewhere that Jordan Peterson won't actually, when he was seeing people, he wouldn't actually even work with people unless they could prove that they were working out, had a routine, and were sleeping at least 7 to 8 hours a night.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I
yeah,
appreciate
he
that. And
was
I just
pretty
go ahead.
hardcore on it, but yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Oh, no, I was just saying, yeah, it's not glamorous, but it's the foundational work that's going to pull you through some dark days. So yeah, I would tell every guy is just writing what you want it to look like first, and then going from there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know that I look back for myself the last month and a half to 2 months, and I've had some physical ailments that's put me down, and I've been working a lot. And I mentioned before the call, I know that I've been isolating myself a little bit, and
Yeah,
it's been challenging. And I know that I haven't been showing up the way that I've wanted to. And so I also want to say to any man that's listening right now, when Mike says like, "Hey, get in the gym or going to the gym," it doesn't have to be a physical gym. Movement, we talked
correct.
about movement at the very beginning. It could go on, it could be a walk, it could be a jog, it could be doing yoga, it could be, whatever the case may be, but putting
Yeah,
some physicality or some movement of your body um is
yeah,
important. It's important for all, but specifically as men, we tend to be
yeah,
more physical creatures, right? And
yeah, yeah.
so I appreciate that feedback there. Uh, I'm just gonna give you the floor for 2 to 3 minutes and let you talk about um kind of, obviously we know what you do, but just whatever you
Yeah.
want to with regards to this topic.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah. I think a good thing to note too is that if you are interested in therapy, finding the right therapist is important. but also knowing that there's different styles of therapy, right? So I guess just as a little nugget, when you're interviewing a therapist, like make sure they kind of have a game plan, right? The biggest complaint, unfortunately, I hear from a lot of people who've been in therapy is, well, I just went to supportive therapy. All they did was listen and kind of nod and write notes down and agree with me, right? That is, and this is just my opinion. I don't want to be burned at the APA stake or anything like that, but it's like your therapist should have kind of a roadmap, right? So I do what's called parts work, which is called formally internal family systems, right? Therapy. But just it's parts work, right? Works really well with guys. I would recommend it for any guy listening out there, just because um, it. So the theory is that we are made up of sub personalities. Okay, so sub personalities kind of manage our life. We have wounded parts that get stuck in there, right? They get frozen. And as guys, we think we're clever on, oh, I'll just kind of push these wounded parts down. I'm going to kind of spackle over them and to kind of put them into compartments. But they leak through, right? They leak through, and then you find yourself managing more and more of your life, not really living. So I like parts work for guys. Obviously, I'm biased because I've trained in parts work, but I think it's important for guys to at least get in somewhere. So yeah, interview your therapist. Would you be friends with this person? Do you trust this? Can you see yourself trusting this person over time? I think guys really need to be engaged in therapy if they're going to get a lot out of it. So that's just my little platform for therapy. But yeah, otherwise, if you're in the Great Lakes region, over here in Metro Detroit, it's pretty easily accessible to a lot of areas around here. And yeah, we have 3 men's groups running during the year. We take a break in the summer, so we're just actually about to wrap up the spring group. And then next couple weeks, I'll be launching our second annual men's wilderness retreat, which will be in mid-Michigan, so Big Rapids, Michigan. So we talked about before too, of just adding in that wilderness component. I think now more than ever, as everything starts to be automated and artificial and all this stuff, it's time to really just connect with the land again too. We're very out of touch. So yeah, those are the 3 things I'm kind of passionate about. And yeah, it's been a wild ride, kind of doing a 10-year reflection. Is they say in grad school, you don't really know who you are in this field until you're about 10 years in. And that was true. That was really true. We all kind of scoffed at that time, right? It's like, well, we know we're gonna be therapists, but yeah, it's interesting how that lines up. I've never been so clear on the population I want to work with, how I want to work with men, and just seeing the road before me. So it's an exciting thing, and I hope that every guy can feel that and lean to his edge and his mission, because it's what kind of feeds us, right? It's what feeds us in a crazy world. So yeah.
I appreciate that. I know that you mentioned the things that you have up, but how can men reach out to you if this message, your story resonated with those that are listening? How can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, probably easiest way is metrodetroitmenstherapy.com. Pretty simple, just hyphenated there. Also on therapist as Mike Lamerato therapist. So underscores between those. If you want to link that or do whatever. Yeah, happy to do a free consult. Happy to, if you're in another state, happy to help you find a therapist in that state or give you some ideas of how that would help you. Connect you with any wilderness things. Also worked with veterans for a ton of years too. So I have a colleague here in Michigan who does a lot of veteran and law enforcement work. So if that's you, please reach out as well. Yeah, would be happy to even talk about if you want to become a therapist and what that looks like. Obviously don't know all the answers, but happy to share what I've learned. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that, Mike, and I really do appreciate your time. I'll make sure that I link all those things that we just mentioned in the comments in the show notes.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you for your time. I know that you're busy and look forward to the next time.
Cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.